Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the August 20th, 2024 Matthews County School Board regular monthly meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1.3, may we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Morgan?
Mr. Morgan?
Present.
Mr. Dobson?
Present.
Ms. Diggs?
Present.
Mrs. Hodges?
Present.
And Dr. Gibbs?
Present. Item 1.4, I'm seeking approval of the agenda, additions and deletions. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 16th, 2024 regular meeting and July 17th, 2024 school board summer work session as written.
Point of order, we're on 1.4, approval of the agenda, additions and deletions. Would you like to revise your motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as listed.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 1.5, I'm seeking approval of the minutes for the July 16th, 2024 regular monthly meeting and July 17th, 2024 school board summer work session. Do I have a motion?
I'll just repeat my motion. To approve the minutes of July 16th, 2024 regular meeting, monthly meeting, and July 17th, 2024 school board summer work session as written.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
So motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 1.6, I would just like to announce that very shortly we'll be having the Matthews High School summer graduation ceremony. Item 1.7, we will be reviewing the Matthews County School Board governance norms and protocols. Again, this is something that we do at every business meeting. We highlight 2 or 3 items on the norms and protocols so that we can familiarize the community with some of the standards that the school board sets forth and abides by. Mr. Morgan, would you read the highlighted items this evening? Page 2, and would you please turn your mic on?
Board members are encouraged to speak via phone or face-to-face. Communication between board members and superintendent. Board members are encouraged to communicate to the superintendent via phone calls, text, or email based upon the topic. Communications between board members and staff, including requests. Board members will speak directly to the superintendent with any request for information. Information shared with one board member will be shared with all board members if readily available. If considerable work, pardon me 1 second here, more than 2 hours is required to generate data, the majority of the board must endorse the request during a meeting of the board.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. Item 2, we will take a brief recess to prepare for meeting summer graduation.
rise, or please remain standing for the playing of our national anthem. Please be seated. It is my pleasure to introduce the Superintendent of Matthews County Public Schools, Dr. David Daniel.
Thank you, Dr. Grief. Good evening and welcome to Matthews High School Class of 2024 Summer Graduation Ceremony. This is a very special evening where we are able to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of the wonderful young men and women before us tonight. Class of 2024, I want to congratulate you on your accomplishments and your graduation from Matthews High School. We are proud of you and wish you the best of luck in all your future endeavors.
Graduates, I want to express to you how proud we are that you reached this wonderful accomplishment. You worked hard over the summer to finish your requirements and graduate from Matthews High School. This is truly the first step to a bright future for you all. Take what you have learned over the past 4 years, both educationally and personally, to guide you to a successful future. Congratulations. All right, at this time, will the graduates please stand and come up to the stage? Haley Beth Howell. Trinity Marie Minton. Caitlin Ann Mullins. Colton Michael Owens. Maria Lynn Pittman.
Members of the class of 2024, please remain standing. As principal of Matthews High School, it is my privilege to have the honor of certifying in front of these assembled here today that this evening, that all of you have met the requirements set forth by the Virginia Department of Education and Matthews County Public Schools necessary to receive the diplomas that were issued here today. Please remain standing for the conferring of diplomas by the Chairman of the Matthews County School Board, Dr. Marion Gibbs.
Good evening, graduates. By the power vested in me by the Board of Education of the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Matthews County School Board, I hereby confer upon you your high school diploma. You may now move your tassel from the right to the left. Congratulations.
Members of the class of 2024, please remain standing. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to introduce to you the Matthews High School graduating class of 2024. This concludes our ceremony. Thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate these students. Please remain seated as we exit using this recessional. Congratulations, graduates.
Board will reconvene from the recess for our wonderful graduation ceremony. We'll proceed with item number 4, Student Spotlight from Thomas Hunter Middle School with Miss Michelle Williams from the FCCLA advisor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for, first of all, for your support and for having us here with you this evening. The last meeting, we were approved to travel with these 2 students to go to Seattle, Washington for the FCCLA National Competition. Lily placed a gold medal in Fashion Construction Level 1 at the state conference, which qualified her to take that same ensemble to Seattle to compete at the national level. And while she won a gold award at the state competition, she actually placed a silver award, which she has her medal with her, at the national conference. Neither of these 2 young ladies had ever flown before, so they are now officially world travelers. We got to experience just about every kind of travel that there was between the airplane, a boat, a tram, and a subway, as well as we walked and a taxi, probably about 40 miles the time we were there because we did not rent a car. We walked everywhere we went. We got to visit Pike's Place Market and watch the throwing of the fish. We went to not the first, but the oldest existing Starbucks location, and we got to have Starbucks while we were there. We went to the Space Needle. We went to see the Baltimore Orioles and the Seattle Mariners ball game. And one of the highlights of these 2 ladies' trip, and my own, was watching them start as very quiet Matthews small-town girls. And one of the highlights of national conference is pin trading. So while there, each pin, and this is mine, but each pin represents a student from another state. And each one of these young ladies came back with upwards of 40 different pins. You had how many? 53, and Maya, you had?
I think I had like 50, but I had duplicates, and I gave some of my duplicates to a girl whose house burned down.
We got back, and as soon as we got back from nationals, the advisors got an email that one of the seniors that had traveled to nationals returned home with her suitcase full of souvenirs, and that evening their house burned. So we sent a care package with our extra pins that we got and one of our t-shirts and some memorabilia. So I am very proud. These young ladies put Matthews on the map. They went and they did us proud. We were in a sea of more red jackets than reside in Matthews County at that conference. There were just shy of 9,000 red jackets all over the city of Seattle, and everywhere we went, people stopped and, what's with the red? What's with the red? And they were able to say where they were from, why they were there, and that they were there to experience all the wonderful things that Seattle had to offer. But I will say, all 3 of us are very happy to be back on East Coast soil because we are East Coasters. But thank you so much for your recognition. Well, thank you and congratulations. I would like to ask Lily and Maya, if you could sum it up, the experience, if you could sum the experience up in one sentence, what would it be? You can each have your own sentence.
Give me a minute to think about that.
I don't think I could do one sentence, maybe like 3.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, well, I know that definitely I got to know a few different people. I met some other girls from Virginia as well for the state meeting, and we became friends, and we had like dinner together, we hung out, and it was fun. It made the experience more better, I'd say, and we got to like enjoy the Space Needle and the different attractions with them. And also the pin trading got me talking a lot. Like, I'm kind of shy, but then I got to meet new people from different states. I got to meet people from Puerto Rico, Hawaii, Colorado, Seattle itself, all different states. It was very nice. And I also loved presenting, and like there was stress with like setting up the board and all that stuff, but I feel like it helped with like the time management as well with working with that, and that's what I'd say. And it was
course.
overall a great experience.
And I would never guess that you were shy to speak. Good job. Maya?
I would say it was definitely an experience, but I liked meeting people from different states. Like the people from Hawaii, I talked to some people from there, and they said that it was their first time coming to the mainland, and they were saying like that stuff like that things in Hawaii are a lot different than things over here. And I was talking to them, and I was like, what? They were like, well, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from Virginia. And they were like, where's Virginia? And I was like, I said, well, it's very close to Washington, D.C. It's like the Triangle State. And they were like, oh, I know what you're talking about. As soon as I said like the Triangle State, it was fun walking around, and it was fun seeing like the different sites and like experiencing different things over there that I probably wouldn't have done in Matthews before.
Great report. Thank you. So glad you were able to do that. And congratulations on your fabulous competition results.
You were ambassadors of Matthews County.
Yes.
It sounds like you had a good time, made new friends, and I hope you get to travel in the future to do more.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Good job. Item 5, Teacher Spotlight. This is so exciting. From Matthews Elementary School, we have Miss Amy Ashbury, kindergarten teacher.
I'm Jessica Larche here at Matthews Elementary School in Matthews County, and we are getting ready to surprise our newest everyday hero, kindergarten teacher, Amy Ashbury. She's an incredible volunteer with Operation Christmas Child, where she collects donations to help children all across the world. So I have my team here ready to help me surprise her. Are you ready? Yeah! Let's go! Hi. Are you Amy Ashbury?
I am.
How are you today?
Good.
You seem surprised, Miss Ashbury.
Miss Ashbury and her class were in for a big surprise on June 7th, the last day of school before summer at Matthews Elementary.
Do you guys know what's going on?
We're on the news.
What did you say, honey?
We're on the news.
You are on the news. You are on the news. And here is why you are on the news. You are News 3's newest everyday hero.
A humble and happy acceptance from a teacher whose generosity has impacted children here in Matthews County.
Just love to reach as many kids as we can.
And they love you.
And children across the globe with Operation Christmas Child, part of the Samaritan's Purse charity relief organization. Every year, Ashbury galvanizes the community, including her students, to help fill and pack thousands of shoe boxes with donated toys, school supplies, and clothes to send to kids across the world who need it most. To date, her efforts have helped get nearly 11,000 boxes to children in over 160 countries. Ashbury even purchased 2 school buses at auction to help store and transport it all.
Like a lot of amazing people in this community who all give a little bit and makes big things happen.
Why do you like helping with the shoe boxes?
Because kids don't have any toys, but I want them to have toys and happy Christmases.
It's that lesson in generosity that Ernestine Bonney's grandkids learned when they were students in Ashbury's class years ago. It's why she nominated her for the Everyday Hero Award.
Amy, you're just amazing.
Ashbury's family tells me her spirit of giving began when she was a little girl.
She helped a family with some Christmas ornaments as a child when they didn't have anything. And, you know, I think back on that, I'm like, that was probably the beginning of all this.
Ashbury's principal's pretty proud, too.
But what does it mean to you as a principal to know that one of your educators goes above and beyond for the kids here and children all around the world?
She goes above and beyond every day.
Amy is a phenomenal teacher.
Her students couldn't agree more.
I love her because she's the best teacher. Miss Ashbury is the best teacher. I love her to death. Miss Ashbury is the best teacher ever.
Not only are you a News 3 everyday hero, our partners at Southern Bank are celebrating you too with a $300 gift card. Yes, yes, $300.
A deserving celebration for a teacher whose reach goes beyond the classroom.
We are celebrating our newest everyday hero, Miss Amy Ashbury.
Oh, I had it. Yes.
What a fun day.
Oh, it was a blast. So that we got to surprise her on the last day of school. So as you can imagine, the kids are already charged up. It's an emotional day. But she really does so much. And you think about her reach there in Matthews County. Everyone in the town knows her, and they know that they can help out with the shoe boxes. So I have links inside this story, WTKR.com, so you can help her out as well.
Yes, and she purchased 2 school buses.
Yes.
Oh, my word. That is incredible. And the gift of empathy that she's teaching these children, invaluable.
That is what is going to go and last them the rest of their lives.
That's right. Wow. And if you'd like to nominate somebody, you can, right?
Yes, at WTKR.com. We know there are so many people doing such good work in our community.
Absolutely. And this morning, today, yesterday, the weather has been mwah. Is that going to continue?
A wonderful tribute to Miss Ashbury. Miss Ashbury, will you please stand to get a round of applause from everyone? You are amazing. Thank you for all you do and all you'll continue to do. I hope you have the greatest year ever coming up. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, moving on to item 6, school board student representative. I believe we'll have Dr. Grieve approach the microphone with our school board student representative announcement.
Yeah, so school hasn't quite started yet. It actually did for this young lady, but Suki Zhang will be our student representative for the upcoming school year. Very excited for Suki, and she's very excited about the opportunity. We talked about this last week, and she said, I don't really have any news to share. School hasn't started yet. So we'll be introducing her with a formal introduction at the September school board meeting, which she's very excited to start.
Wonderful. We're excited to have her. Thank you. Moving now to item 7 under student achievement. Dr. Grieve, might as well keep standing at the podium there, 7.1. A presentation for the school board. you're anticipating for this coming year for DE?
I don't want to speak to that because I don't know, like, our school counseling office is very busy right now.
Okay.
So we don't know exactly, I don't want to tell you a number and then next week, it's first day of school, it's going to change. But it's very similar. It's very similar. So the next. Yes, in U.S. history this year, one of the moves with Ms. Hartlove coming to the high school to teach world geography is she is also going to be teaching U.S. history dual enrollment. We're looking at trying to increase those opportunities as well. So some of these numbers, when you look at dual enrollment numbers, some of these are students taking a course online that we don't have an actual course, a teacher actually offering that course at Matthews High School. That's the minority of these classes. Most of the numbers are an actual classroom with students enrolled in those courses. But we're looking to increase opportunities in all areas, yes.
Is it still the fact that when the school offers the teacher, like Mr. Corrigan, that the student only needs to pay a nominal amount for the tuition versus if they have a teacher from the community college, they have to pay the full tuition amount?
It is different, yes, it is different. It's a good deal for our students.
I mean, it used to be like $20 a credit, I think. I don't know what it is.
I don't know that it's
that low. It's gone up.
I can't speak to that. I don't know the actual.
Actually, we're going to, and later in the agenda, there's a revised fees as part of our agenda, but you'll note later that it's $15 per credit hour. So most of the dual enrollment classes that are offered are typically 3 credit hours. So students are getting a college credit for $90, whereas were they to take that course on campus or via an RCC professor, it would be upwards of, I think, $360, somewhere around in there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out, that they're getting really college credit for a very nominal amount. Thank you.
So this. student population. So when you're looking at slightly smaller numbers, do some things with our scores. They're going to vary more than they normally would. We also have students that sometimes take the SAT multiple times. So when you look at these scores, this is the darker blue represents the fall scores. Some of these are the same students that might take it in the fall and then also in the spring. And then, so you're looking at 2021 to 2024, and there's a steady increase in scores in the SAT scores. Again, these are small numbers, so I don't want to say that they're small numbers, but we're moving in the right direction.
When you say small numbers, can you give me an idea of what that looks like?
For SATs, you're talking about probably somewhere around 26, but that's like in the fall and the spring. So you're, I think the first 2 years are 26. There was a little bit of a smaller senior class last year, so it's a little bit of a smaller number, but it's, and again, I mean, too much information. We had two students that we had quite a few students last year that were very high, and we had two in particular that were, they achieved 1,400, and they're trying to get a better version of the 1,400, so they took it multiple times. Like that's going to help our data. But it's, I just want to make sure I'm completely open with the board. But still, trend is moving in the right direction. Next slide. This is one that was eye-opening for me, and I'd love to keep this on the screen all day long. So this is PSAT data. Now, when you're looking at the PSAT, the SAT is usually juniors and seniors who are. That's what their Scholastic Aptitude Test is. The test they are taking to get into school. Now, some of those numbers are going to decline because not all colleges are requiring an SAT anymore. So that number, the number of students taking the SAT, may continue to kind of steadily decline just because it's kind of outdated. A lot of colleges don't require it, and that kind of changed during COVID. The PSAT is a test that some freshmen take. Very, very accelerated freshmen would take this test to kind of get their feet wet in this type of testing. So that sophomore year, they can take the NMSQT, National Merit Qualifier Test. And so that, to try to get in to be a National Merit qualifier, to get the National Merit Scholar, that's what you take. That is extremely hard to get, and so that would be a sophomore that's also kind of at the higher end of the class. But maybe one or two freshmen each year would take that test. So that's what we're looking at here. The 21-22, just to give you an idea of the numbers, the 21-22 school year, that was 54 that took it that year. That's because we didn't have it in 2021, so because of COVID, so that's probably kind of an inflated number that year. The other 2 years, we had 38 students each, so about 2/3 of a grade level, between half and 2/3 of a grade level that took this test. Now, this is the exciting part. The light blue is your Matthews High School average score. The gray is the Virginia average. So in 2021-22 school year, we had the exact same. We averaged what Virginia averaged in terms of the PSAT, but both Virginia and Matthews High School exceeded the global average. So now global, this is a global test. This is not just the U.S. In 2022-23, Matthews High School went to 978. And Virginia dipped a little bit to 939. Globally, dipped a little bit, 942. And so we exceeded both the state and the global average of PSAT tests, the average score on their PSATs. And then that trend continued this past school year with a 996 at Matthews High School, where you look at our state is a 954, and globally it dipped again to 933. So as far as the PSAT, it looks makes Matthews High School look really good. We're doing something right. And again, this is not all students. This is 38 students. So over 50% of the students in the grade level that would be taking the test.
Regarding that test, and its so many advantages, are there any cost barriers to students who would like to take that test but are unable to afford the test?
No, ma'am. I believe it's $20, and there's no student that would want to take the test that couldn't because of the cost. Yeah. And typically PSAT scores, it's a good predictor of your SAT scores. So the PSAT scores are going to be lower than your SAT averages just because they're younger. Usually students can expect to gain at least 100 points from their PSAT to their SAT, but it's usually more than that even. Any other questions?
On courses that require the APT test, is there something you judge these kids on to let them know if they stand a chance? Or?
So the AP, that's a good question. So the AP tests, it's a very rigorous course. The AP courses are very rigorous. Our teachers don't necessarily have they don't take like a pre-AP test monthly or anything like that if you're asking that question. But there's a very scripted curriculum for AP courses, and that's a big reason why the first year a teacher teaches an AP course, they don't get the pass rates they do in the second and third year. It takes some time. So also with dual enrollment courses, you have to have a master's degree in that area to teach a dual enrollment course, whereas in the AP test or AP course, a teacher can basically take a 1 week, it's about $1,000 to take this 1 week course and to gain certification to teach that AP class. So it's easier as a school to increase AP course offerings. However, when you're looking at weighing the pluses and minuses, the advantage to having dual enrollment is every student is going to get the college credit if they pass the course, whereas again, if a student has a bad day, that day they don't get the college credit. So many schools in our area are increasing dual enrollment opportunities and not focusing as much on AP courses, but I hope I answered your question. There's not a good predictor per se of whether they're going to pass or not, other than how they're doing in that course.
Well, it used to be, and I don't know if it still stands, that the PSAT gave a predictor of Linda Hodges would only get a 2 in the English because she's just not there, where Dr. Gibbs would probably predict to be a 5 in the same class. So it used
You're saying
to
the
be that you would get
PSATs?
that, with the PSAT, that data used to come out. I don't know if it still does or not, but it'll give you an idea based on that test how that student will do in a particular, and it even breaks it down to what test they'll do well in, and I don't know if they still do that. I know they used to.
Probably does. I'll be honest with you. So the PSAT data, I was going to prepare more in-depth data for the board, but the PSAT spreadsheet, you can keep scrolling. I want to say it's probably like 4 feet long if you were to print out every single column. So I reviewed numbers and percentage rates and all those things. I didn't get into that nitty-gritty of the predicting
You're
qualities.
exactly right. It's extraordinarily
It's huge.
It's mammoth, yes.
So, any other questions? I'd kind of like to keep this up for a while, so I don't, anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd move on to item 7.2. I thought it was important to include an update on our strategic planning process, and so Dr. Daniel, if you would just give us just a bit of an update on and your perceptions of the strategic planning process that we went through and sort of where we're at, and we can all chime in.
Sure. Mr. Anthony is going to load this couple slides up to kind of highlight what we worked on with the strategic plan. Hey, that looks familiar. Thank you. I'm trying to make it work. All right, so we'll go with this. So just a couple highlights on our strategic plan process. So what we did was we wanted to have community input. All right, can you go to the next slide? I'm gonna stop touching the remote. Okay, so the strategic plan, to kind of skip around a little bit, was led by Dr. Deborah Wallstrom. She was contracted by the school board. She is a member of the School Board Member Alliance and has done this work in other divisions in years past, both through her professional experience as a superintendent in other states and other divisions. So part of what we wanted to do, we wanted to have some outside input, outside sort of guidance as we work through this process. The other piece that we wanted to make sure that we had was community input. So members of the Superintendent's Advisory Committee participated in this, along with members of the Faculty and Staff Advisory Committee. All of our school board representatives also participated in that process, along with our principals and senior leadership within the school division. We met over 2.5 days in July. We kind of hunkered down in the Brooks Auditorium at Thomas Hunter. Food was brought in, so basically we could continue the work for 2 full days. The way it was scheduled, we started on a Monday, and then we picked back up on a Wednesday and a Thursday. I will say that that Tuesday break was actually advantageous, as we were able to process some of the data that we were reviewing, and we could begin to make some decisions and do a little more research on that Tuesday into that data and answer some of the questions that arose as we began to dive into that data. So as I've mentioned data probably 10 times in that highlight, it was a very data-driven process. The end document will be a data-rich document as well. We're anticipating a draft version in the coming days. The coming days may be days, it may be a couple weeks, but we anticipate that draft version coming relatively soon. The goal with that draft version is to post that to receive stakeholder input, stakeholders being teachers, administrators, the community, the public, to be able to kind of weigh in on that strategic plan and continue to provide feedback before a final version is then adopted by the board. Can you go to another slide? Okay, so to kind of highlight part of the goal areas that appear in the draft, we really wanted to focus on, as Dr. Gibbs reminds us pretty regularly, that academic achievement, student achievement is our #1 priority. So the #1 goal area that we really kind of dove into was our academic achievement in reading, mathematics, and we know that CTE is an emerging trend, but it's a necessary element of a successful high school and in a successful community. So we wanted to make sure that CTE was included on that. Can we go back? Hey, there we go. So the second goal area is climate and culture. We wanted to really focus on teacher retention. Part of that reason Dr. Grieve just alluded to, the really having teachers going through curriculum, AP, but any new curriculum, anytime teacher experience is critical in doing the best job for our kids. So we wanted to focus on teacher retention, really look at student behavior data. Well, how are we addressing student behavior? What does that data show us? Focusing on chronic absenteeism. We have a history in the division of our chronic absenteeism rates are higher than state average and what they need to be. So we needed to focus on kind of what that data is telling us. On-time graduation, and also looking at just broad climate indicators. What's the vibe in the schools? What's the vibe in the divisions? What do we need to do to address that? And also we wanted to look at consolidation. So as we worked through those goal areas, we had different groups, a mix of representation in each one of those groups to focus on reading, math, CTE. We had a climate and culture group that took on a lot of different topics, but we also had a consolidation group to look at, as a division, what do we need to do based on our enrollment data? Where can we consolidate? What does that look like? We also recognize that our county is also working through their strategic planning process. So we know that consolidation and kind of what to do with schools is an important piece of their consolidation work as well. So we wanted to do our own work to look at that as we begin to work alongside the supervisors in the county on their strategic work. So what you see to the right is a little bit of a screenshot of what the draft sort of mock-up of the strategic plan looks like. One of the pieces I've given feedback on, very superficial, is the coloring. So we want to make sure we're going to have Matthews blue and Matthews yellow. That will be part of our strategic brand. And as we look at the new Matthews branding campaign, is making sure we have the appropriate logos and consistency and stuff. But that's the superficial piece. The meat is really in the academic achievement and the climate and the consolidation. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, we highlighted, I mentioned before that it's a data-driven document, so it's probably pretty hard to read with fine print, and it's also kind of a screenshot or a screen grab of what the draft document looks like. But if you can squint really hard, you can see that it's very data-driven. So we're looking at, this is what our current pass rates look like. This is what our subgroup data looks like in terms of student performance. So we're being pretty honest about what our achievement is and setting up goals for what we want our student achievement to be. And then we have action steps that will be built in as to, okay, how are we addressing these deficits and how do we work to turn those deficits into strengths? So these are some of the samples, topics that we work through in our groups. And then this is kind of a draft snapshot of that. So again, public will have opportunity to provide input once that draft document is provided to us. Any questions from the board at this point on the kind of where things stand with the strategic plan?
I don't have any questions. I just want to comment that it was strategically planned, that Dr. Wallstrom really walked us through each of this piece. Just hearing you talk about this now is very overwhelming, but she was able to break it out, and so it wasn't so overwhelming. So I'm looking forward to the final document to give us kind of a roadmap of where we need to go.
Agreed. Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Daniel. We'll be speaking strategic plan often. It will be part of our monthly meetings and a guiding foundation for all of us in the division toward improvement, specifically in student achievement. So let's move to number 8, which is our citizens' questions, comments, or requests. And I'll read out the direction here for 8.1. Comments not pertaining to personnel or student matters. Protocol for public comment period. Matthews County residents and school employees wishing to speak should sign up with their name and address on the sheet provided. Each individual will have 3 minutes to speak. Comment period will end after 90 minutes. All comments should be directed to the school board. Speakers shall not address matters involving students or personnel, as these topics may violate confidentiality and are not appropriate in a public forum. Public comment is the school board's opportunity to listen to the speaker. Since our purpose is to hear from you, the board will not engage in dialogue with the audience or whoever is at the podium. Matters requiring a response will be directed to the superintendent for research and response. The superintendent may report back on such matters at a subsequent business meeting session as appropriate. The school board carefully considers your comments when deciding on matters brought before us. We appreciate your attendance and your input. Our first person to speak tonight is Amy Bohannon-Stewart.
Good evening, Amy Bohannon-Stewart. There's just a few things that I want to make sure aren't neglected. I'm pleased to hear so many great things about our new Thomas Hunter Middle School principal, both before and after she arrived. I hope that Matthews County Public Schools is not setting new or existing employees up for failure this year. I know that I felt like I was being set up for failure this time last year. When you set your employees up for failure, you set your students up for failure too. Thomas Hunter Middle School has been neglected for 2 years straight, and it seemed like all of the Thomas Hunter Middle School was set up for failure last year too. That is why you had so many employees resign and or retire at that school at the end of last year. So, I know that there are now fewer students at Thomas Hunter Middle School, but when SOL testing is running, I hope you'll be providing Mrs. Simpson with appropriate support, particularly during SOL testing. When you have that going on, you need an administrator running SOL testing and one administrator handling everything else. And I'm really tired of seeing our county neglect Thomas Hunter Middle School students. This neglect should not continue for a third straight year. I want to make sure that something else is not forgotten too. The wonderful administrator and math teacher Pam Hudgens retired recently. She was a certified Erlin screener and ran our summer STEM camps. I love teaching the STEM camps, and I think the children really enjoyed them as well. And I really hope you'll continue that. Erlin screening is an important job too. That was what she did as well. And if we want to do what's right for our students, I hope you will make sure that if we're not going to hire an Erlin screener, that you contract with one to identify kids with that issue, that if they struggle with reading. I'd like to see data about how many students you identify in the future. I would like to request all 3 schools do something to celebrate Constitution Day as well. There was a teacher at Thomas Hunter Middle School that led a celebration of Constitution Day the last several years, and I know she's no longer working at Thomas Hunter. And I really appreciate the past efforts of Mrs. Hughes in celebrating Constitution Day, and I hope that continues at Thomas Hunter. I think Constitution Day should be celebrated in some fashion at all 3 schools. It is disturbing how many violations of constitutional rights I have seen in our society in the past several years. Perhaps if students participate in celebrating the Constitution more often, they will understand just how important it is. And one final thing. A while back, I asked that our superintendent spend some time subbing in the schools. To my knowledge, this has not happened. I was so excited when the superintendent where I work now in New Kent announced that he would be setting aside time monthly to sub in schools when a sub could not be found. I think it would help climate if our superintendents did this. Thank you.
Ms. Bohannon Stewart, I have one question for you. I could not hear. You had a request for data on something specific.
Erlin syndrome. It's a condition, I have it actually, and it's bad for me to see black letters on a white background. Probably why I was a slow reader most of my life. And not all kids, you know, some people have it in different ways, and you treat it with like overlays over, and it just makes it easier to read something. Some kids might need a red one or a gray one, or I needed a blue one, and it makes things a lot easier. I wish I discovered it before last year. So, but I think that's an important thing to make sure we keep doing. Does that help?
Thank you, yes.
It's spelled, I think it's spelled I-R-L-E-N.
Thank you. Ms. Leanne Bray.
Hi, good evening. Leanne Bray. Do I need to say my address? No? Okay. All right, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for a couple of minutes tonight. I want to speak on behalf, or as Matthews Elementary School principal, but also Leanne Bray, community member in Matthews County. So about a month ago, I had the opportunity to become the principal at Matthews Elementary School and Miss Jody Simpson at Thomas Hunter. So we started about the same time, and the very first weekend, my husband met her husband on tractors with tools and things because the outside of those 2 school buildings just needed some extra love. And so I reached out to the PTO, and they stepped up to clean and paint light poles that are pencils in our parking lot. I have a whole entire list of things. The idea was the light poles, but you know when you paint your house and you think I'm gonna do one room, and you do that, but then the next room is now bad, and you keep going and keep going. That's kind of, I think, what happened on the outside of our buildings, and the community members, the teachers' families, and our own families stepped up in ways that were completely overwhelming. The football team was a part of the cleanup. The list goes on. And so if you haven't had the opportunity, I would encourage you just to drive by and take a look at how beautiful the community made the outside of our schools. I would also put a plug in, if anybody is interested, we still have more outdoor projects that we would love to, have some help with. So I really want to give a shout out to our community because we live in an amazing place. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to approach the podium?
Marie Walls, Port Haywood, Virginia. I communicated earlier with Dr. Daniel about the annual division safety audit. It concerned me when I looked over the agenda as a parent and a Commonwealth's attorney that the safety audit may be something that is not given as much importance as it should in the community. When I looked over it and I prepared for tonight's meeting, it looked like it was all principals, the superintendent, the IT person that were community members on the audit commission. The code, DCJS requires that it has law enforcement, community service board members, that it be wide-reaching within the community. The reason for that is just as teachers can see things in our children that we don't see as parents, law enforcement, prosecutors, people dealing in mental health can see things that maybe people in IT or in administrative positions don't see. Dr. Daniel knows, and I told him I was going to address this tonight, I respect him. We meet often. We are 95% of the time on the same page. We've talked about the courts addressing Chin's petitions, truancy, and the lack of follow-through that we're both trying to grasp at how to address that in the school system. But as a parent, safety is my most important concern. I can help my child catch up on reading, math. I can get him extra things in his lunchbox. I can't help him if he's hurt at school, or gosh forbid, if he is killed at school. So for the safety audit, we need to really have an aggressive presence of law enforcement looking at our schools and making them safe. Lastly, I think we all, sometimes when we speak up here, talk in negativity instead of positively. So I want to say, Dr. Daniel, I think you're doing great things. I think the school board is doing great things. And as far as the new people to the Matthews principals, your constitutional officers are here to help you. Call us for Constitutional Day. Call us for presentations. Call us for reading to the students. We are here to help you, both as parents, as community members, but more importantly, to be your partners in assisting our students. So I want to thank you all for what you're doing. As far as safety, I think we saw in the news what happened in Suffolk, where someone in mental health crisis entered a school through a door, entered a bathroom where two girls were locked in a stall, and the superintendent said on the news that was not a breakdown in safety. That was a breakdown in safety, and we just simply cannot have that here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Fry, Port Haywood, and I'm not here to speak about how this is set up, but you need to know when you're sitting out there and we're looking up here, you're sitting in the dark. And when you're sitting out there, I know that you had graduation. But the podium is in the way of all of the school board. We can't see the faces of the reactions of how the school board is reacting. So anyway, I'm here to agree with Amy about our precious Constitution, which is September 17th. Do you all realize that Constitution Day is off most calendars? On mine, it isn't there, but on September 16th, Mexico's Independence Day is on there. In my humble opinion, our country is in chaos, and we are on the verge of socialism, true socialism, which will lead to communism. America needs to wake up. It is imperative that we teach all children the importance of this wonderful document. The younger, the better, as frequent as possible. Not just 3 years and 12 years of our school system. It will be up to our next generation to keep freedom in America, and they need to know how important our Constitution is. I do hope our school will recognize Constitution Day this year and every year in the future. Thank you. Like your strategic plan, it sounds great. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Hicks, North Virginia. Make me a +3 on the Constitution. Another item. We, this county, have enough classroom space for 1,200 students. We have 800 or so students in our school system with no great expectations that's going to increase anytime soon. Taxpayers are paying to heat, cool, maintain unneeded classroom space for 400 students. I don't know about other taxpayers, but I don't like paying for excess unused classroom space, plus unneeded staffing, principals, administration, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Donna Machen, Foster, Virginia. I am asking you to celebrate the Constitution during Constitution Week. As you know, the Constitution is required by federal law to be taught. How pertinent and how important it is to teach them when they're young. We all know as educators how important it is during those early years to 3. Why wait? It's our nation's children's heritage. It gives them their rights and responsibilities. All U.S. children have a right to know what their forefathers provided for them. We have a republic. They are U.S. citizens first. I was there during the 90s teaching in the public school when our education curriculum flipped. It went from teaching about neighbors, community, the local community, the state, then the federal, and then they were taught about the world. It flipped to kindergartners learning about the globe, and it went backwards. I disagree, and I think many Americans do agree with me that it's wrong. The influence of the UN, UNESCO, social emotional learning, all these things that they're pushing down our children's throats in our community are wrong. I recommend a book to you called Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. Please remember that title, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. Government Schools, War on Faith, Family, and Freedom, and How to Stop It by Alex Newman. The reason I bring up this book is because some of you may not be aware of everything that's going on. As a public school teacher, back then, I was not aware of everything that was going on. Those were the seeds, and they're coming to fruition. Now you must be educated. Whether you agree or not, you must learn what you should learn, which is that the UN has an agenda for your children, which is anti-American. Please read this book. It says about the book, building over a decade of research and investigative reporting into the indoctrination, sexualization, and dumbing down of children, Alex Newman documents the untold history behind government education, its founders, like nobody else has ever done. Among other bombshells, this book proves that the system is not broken, but is working well when considering the goals of its architects. These goals include turning Americans away from God, fundamentally transforming the nation away from its constitutional foundations, and more, using primary source documentation, interviews, and insights from leading experts. Newman not only diagnoses the problem, but also offers true solutions that are long overdue. Constitutions are a year-round tool. Constitution Week should be celebrated by schools. Think about the honorable organizations which have celebrated Constitution Week every year. Think about the DAR. Everybody thinks of the DAR respectfully. They are not political. They are simply teaching history. It is worth your time, and I understand there is a possibility of availability of Constitution, so they should be handed out to the children, and please start young.
Ms. Machen, I'm sorry, your time is up.
And I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much. I did not sign up. I did not know that protocol initially before we started, but I would be remiss to recognize some of the work that has gone on at Thomas Hunter and at Matthews Elementary. And I know that Ms. Bray mentioned a couple of people, but I wanted to make sure that we recognized the work that our custodial staff has done at both schools. Poor Miss Roxanne, when she sees me coming, she says, "Oh no, what now?" But I wanted to say publicly thank you to those that in both of our buildings, because they have really supported the things that we would like to really make better for our students. I also wanted to say thanks to the maintenance crew from our schools and from the county. We have had some county support. I also wanted to thank Miss O'Neill, who did organize, when I messaged her and said, "Hey, would the football team like to put their muscles to work?" And she immediately messaged me back and said, "Absolutely, we'll get some kids together." And we had a really good time that day, kind of making some changes and kind of pushing some tables where they needed to be. So I just wanted to say thank you to those people. And several dads and parents came to help us. So I just wanted to, publicly announce that and say thank you to those people, because we really do appreciate the support of the community, the support of parents. And I know that Ms. Bray talked about her PTO, and we are looking forward to moving forward with the Thomas Hunter Parent Organization, and there will be some more information about that coming out. And I will put this bee in your bonnet just so you can think about this. I'm in the process of planning a day of giving, and I will announce later when that will be for us to really celebrate our school with some more help with other projects that we have moving forward. So I'll give you some dates when that will be a day of giving for Thomas Hunter. So thank you so much. And I also wanted to say thank you so much for this opportunity to be the principal of the school. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Simpson. Is there anyone else who would like to approach the podium? All right, 8.2, school board comments. Mr. Dobson?
Yes, I want to thank all the people that turned out the other day to paint and clean up the 2 classrooms over in Thomas Hunter. This county should be fortunate of the groups that we have here. They lend a lot of time to the school system. They collect things, they donate things, and the people donate their time. It's something that you don't see today, and it is dying out. Young people are not doing this anymore. We have the Lions Club here in the county that's just about ready to fold. And there's several other small organizations that are losing people faster than they can gain. Community service is the greatest thing in the world. I've been doing it since I've been 14. My father took me down the street and introduced me to 2 widows, and I cut their grass and shoveled their snow, and I couldn't collect a dime. And I've been doing it ever since. It's the greatest thing in the world. I get a good feeling for helping others that need the help. So I really appreciate the people that turned out. Thank you.
More comments from members? Ms. Diggs.
I have a couple of comments. Some of your ladies have gone, but Ms. Williams, I kept up with you all when you were at West, and I hope those girls have gotten their appetite whet for travel and the kinds of things that you, as their leader, and Matthews County Schools were able to shove them into or lead them into, because they seem like they were gung-ho, and I think that's fabulous. Hats off to you. Our homegrown hero in the back there, Ms. Ashbury, you amaze me every day in all that you do, and I think Dr. Greaves was over at the elementary school when I did my first substitute job, which happened to be in your classroom, and he asked me at the end of the day, how did it go? It was probably the hardest day I ever subbed. So you do a marvelous job. I don't know how many of you have seen her in action, but you have more outfits for holidays than there are holidays, I think. But just really good. And I think the idea that was given out about celebrating Constitution Day is wonderful, as well as the Day of Giving, and any help that you all need outside, you have people to call on here. So thank you very much for all you're doing, and I wish you the best school year.
Anyone else?
First of all, I want to thank all the people that came up and spoke, certainly about Constitution Day, and about our great community supporting our schools. You know, it takes a village, clearly, and in Matthews, there is that village that wants to support our school and is supporting our schools. I want to just shout out to, again, our hometown hero, Miss Ashbury. You know, we all know how wonderfully you contribute to our community and to the community of the world. I mean, you really are remarkable. I don't know how you find the time to do all of this. But tonight I just want to thank you for what you give to our kindergartners year after year, along with your colleagues. You make a difference in whether they like school or not. You are the beginning. And I suspect, certainly from that video, that every single one of them are eager to come back this year, and that makes a huge difference for every subsequent grade and teacher. So I just want to thank you specifically about that, but in general for all the many things you do. Thank you.
I just have a couple points. All the points spoken on are worthy, but not to duplicate. First of all, I do want to address Ms. Wall's concern regarding the safety audit and the appropriate members being on the committee. And I do want to mention that during our summer work session, the board visited with senior administration about a potential addition of an SRO to our school division. In the upcoming budget, that will be discussed. I think that is a common want by all parties, and we all acknowledge that without safety, there's no reason for us to be here. So that is job one. It's on the radar for sure. The second thing, just to reiterate, thank you for all the people who came and mentioned Constitution Day. I agree with you. This is extremely important that we make sure that that day is acknowledged on the day, and in fact, that is our September business meeting date, is September 17th, which is Constitution Day. We have been speaking about this. Mrs. Hodges and Dr. Daniel and I have been speaking about this at the behest of other citizens who have brought this up to me prior in terms of providing resources to augment the teaching, make the learning meaningful about our Constitution. I will continue to promote and work on this issue to make sure that our curriculum contains adequate, if not more than adequate, information about our amazing Constitution of our country. And thank you for bringing up that issue. That is all from me. Mr. Morgan, any comments tonight? Okay, anyone else? Okay. All right, great, thank you, board. We will proceed to item 9, superintendent's informational reports. Starting with that.
All right, thank you, Dr.
Safety
Gibbs.
audit. Yeah.
To make sure we don't get feedback. Just to kind of highlight, as we begin to talk about the safety audit, kind of highlight and reiterate comments from Ms. Walls. She's absolutely right. We didn't have all the people in the room as we reviewed this audit that we needed to have, and so we'll work on making sure that when we're having safety discussions, and we'll make sure that we have the right people in the rooms. The audit that you're looking at today is sort of a summary document of many of the other processes that take place regarding safety in the division. So part of that process is reviewing the crisis management plan, where we do have diverse parties being involved in that. School safety survey, division level survey, and the secondary school climate survey, so that those documents and those surveys tap into a lot of different stakeholders to provide feedback. And then every 3 years is the school safety inspection checklist. Often that's referred to or is felt to be the audit. Historically, what that process is a diverse group of individuals who kind of walk through the buildings with a state template checklist to look at aspects of the building. And so that's done every 3 years. But the audit that you have in front of you, kind of really what the results of this review landed on was, for the most part, hardening the exterior of our buildings. Hardening the exterior typically refers to easy things, are kind of locking doors and access control, like how do folks get in, our key fob system, and how do you punch codes and that sort of stuff. But it also looks at the process that we have for intruder drills. How do we automatically lock doors in the cases of lockdowns or hold status? But hardening the exterior also can refer to what is fencing around our properties. How do we improve fencing? Where are the needs for fencing? Lighting around our property. I think we've had kind of informal conversations about the lighting outside of our buildings, street lights, lighting up the buildings. So those are many of the things that are highlighted in this safety audit for us to go in and look at. Not necessarily related to hardening the exterior is looking at having radios. So we wanted to look at the communication, our internal communication process. How are we just day-to-day communicating, but also do we have, in the event of an emergency, how are we communicating internally to notify what's happening? So we have an automated process, but one of the things we recognized was we have failing, basically, walkie-talkies. We replaced several last year. We've put in an order for more. We put in a request for grant money for this year to replace 30 more of those radios. Those radios are not cheap. They're almost as much as a cell phone these days. So we wanted to make sure that we're using effective devices to communicate within the buildings, and how are we deploying those radios and walkie-talkies. So those were some of the highlights from the safety audit. But again, we have kind of different meetings over the course of a year to look at our safety. Usually those include law enforcement, again, to kind of own our mistake on this one. This particular meeting did not. But to kind of, I guess I'll highlight some other safety processes that we worked through this summer and late spring. We had a tabletop drill that was done in partnership with the Sheriff's Office. SRO participated, our first responders. So we had the rescue squad, fire department, emergency management services, and we met in the library here at the high school and kind of went through scenarios and kind of worked through kind of, what would we do if, and had kind of a timetable and kind of worked on that. So that helped inform what our crisis plans needed to be, but it also put us in the room with the folks who would be responding in those emergency situations. So we're getting better. We're not where we need to be in terms of the process, but we're making strides in that direction. Any questions on audit?
Oh, yeah. Since we've had the phone system, the PA, and the bell system all installed, have we got those all tied together now?
We're still having some challenges with the installation company and it working with an old phone system. So that's Mr. Anthony continues to spend way too much of his time working on that project. So I would say it's probably 85% at its full capacity, but there are components of it that we haven't been able to fully integrate at this point.
Cameras. We had several that were bad, and we wanted to put additional cameras by the bathrooms so we could see who was going in and coming out, and we needed some outside. Have we got those purchased yet?
Cameras have been purchased, installed, paid for, training. We had a brief training with administrators on how to operate the camera system. The new camera system will also have remote access, so our SRO will be able to pull up the camera system on her cell phone. We can provide access to the Sheriff's Office in the event of an emergency. They'll have an access portal, so in the event of an emergency or evening shift, would be able to have a way to remote into the camera system. To kind of highlight, the SRO was part of the camera mapping project, so she was involved with where are the hot spots in the building, do we need to have a new camera at this point or that point. A point of emphasis was making sure that we had cameras visible outside the restrooms. We know having a history of vandalism, so then we can track kind of who was going in and out of the restrooms at that time. All the cameras are synced on the same time code, same timestamp. You can zoom in on areas. It's a remarkable upgrade from where we were. Data storage, upward over a month. I think we probably will have a little bit more than 30 days worth of data storage in the server to work on that camera system, whereas before we were operating with probably a third of our cameras functioning, and the data storage was probably about 48 hours. So we've come into the new century with our camera system. So we have internal cameras, external cameras. I believe we have I'm kind of looking in the booth, but I think we have about 180 cameras deployed in the division. Can you give me a thumbs up, Mr. Anthony? I think that was a thumbs up. So we're about 180 cameras deployed over our 3 schools. And that was grant funded through the state. There was a 25% match from the division, but the 75% of the cost of that camera system was funded through state grant money.
Front doors on this school, they need to be replaced bad because of security. Those doors look like they're the ones that were on it when the school was built. So that's a big problem there. Also, all 3 schools, the spaces as you come in to the foyer where the person in the office speaks out, none of that is protected with bulletproof glass. Mm-hmm. And that is another issue that has to be solved.
I'll talk more when we get to the resolution.
Okay, and I believe you talked to radios, you gave me the info on that. You talked about the lighting, and the only thing you missed was the fencing at Thomas Hunter in the courtroom, courtyard, I'm sorry. Has that been taken care of or ordered or? No?
It has not. I'll talk about it. So to jump ahead a little bit on the agenda, the state reallocated what I believe is ESSER money to school divisions. So on June 30th, we were notified that the division received approximately, I think it's $157,000 in money to work towards safety and security. The parameters are pretty much the same as the annual safety and security equipment grant. So the parameters are pretty much the same. So the resolution that the board will act on a little later in the meeting is requesting the county to reallocate those funds to us because we only had probably 12 hours to work with that money after the state gave it to us. So I'll be asking the board to approve a resolution to reallocate that money. Initial conversations on how to use that money is
$216,000 left.
That's all-in tutoring. The other one is $157,000. So the all-in tutoring money is the $216,000. That's a little bit different purpose. That's for tutoring and after-school projects. But the $157 is for safety and security stuff. So one of the things we've talked about is, I talked with Tim Tillage today. He's got a contractor coming to look at fencing for some county projects. He's going to have that contractor come by and give us an estimate for replacing the fencing in the courtyards at Thomas Hunter. We're also looking at doors. We'll be looking at doors at all three campuses. We were able to replace a set of doors at Thomas Hunter with last year's safety grant money on that annual grant award. So we're going to look at replacing multiple doors, again, hardening that exterior, looking at lighting. I think the hurdle with the front door at the high school is going to be a conversation as to the historical relevance of those front doors. So that is probably a longer conversation about how to maintain some of that while also make sure that we have the safety that we need. And we can definitely look at applying ballistic film to sort of those vestibule areas in the front of each, in front of our offices. There is kind of a retrofitting that you can get ballistic film to apply over those windows. And that's part of a hardening of your exterior strategy. You don't always need to have ballistic film. Well, you wouldn't need to strategize to place ballistic film over every exterior window. You would look at kind of what are the most likely points and where a likely kind of ballistic event would take place. But we can definitely look at costs for hardening that part of the building.
That's it.
Any other safety questions from the board? Okay, 9.2 homeschool survey. There we go. If you just want to slide down a couple slides. All right. Okay, some background information on the homeschool survey. So probably late spring, we sent out a survey to all of our homeschooled families that was physically mailed to our homeschool families. I'm not touching it. So Matthews, at various points during the year last year, we had 145 students who were homeschooled. So we submit a report kind of late fall as to our number of homeschool students at that time. So we have students who may elect to homeschool mid-year, later in the year. So if you go and look at our homeschool data on the DOE website, it will show a number that's slightly smaller than the 145. But Ms. Morgan does a fabulous job of tracking and communicating with our homeschool families for annual updates. And the notice of intent that families submit go to Ms. Morgan. So the bullet item is, so Matthews lists on the DOE 126 on that, the last report, but I think the number as it fluctuates is about 145 as we ended last year. As a point of comparison, Gloucester has, according to the DOE report, 611. Middlesex has 70 on their homeschool kind of tracking data. One piece to note is we really don't have a way to capture the number of students who attend private school. So this is just looking at homeschool. So Ms. Morgan physically mailed letters to the families that represent that 145 students. They're not 145 different families, as many families have multiple students in the home that they homeschool. So there was a link to the survey included in that physically mailed letter. We also posted a link to that survey on our website. We received 18 responses representing 26 students. So 6 of those respondents had multiple students. So go ahead and hit the next slide. So our response rate was not great. A breakdown of the grade levels represented by those responses. So really anywhere from really 1 to 3 students across those grade levels. A high being, I think, grade 3 with having 4 respondents. So I don't know that there's a lot of meat on that slide in terms of what it means, but just kind of giving you an idea of kind of the folks who went ahead and responded to the survey. Go ahead, next slide, please. All right, so the survey asked some questions. I tried to be as brief as possible, but we were trying to capture what the decision to homeschool, what was driving the decision to homeschool. So it basically asked 5 questions. Was there a desire to have more flexibility with the curriculum, more flexibility regarding your child's school attendance? Was there a need for flexibility due to a medical issue? Were there concerns with the discipline practices in the school, or were there concerns with instructional practices in the school? It tried to be somewhat vague to allow parents to select, and parents could select none, and they could put in other and type in a response, or they could put in multiple decisions. So most families, there's a kind of tally data, but most families selected more than one reason. There was more than one reason that drove their decision to homeschool. Okay, next slide. It also asked if there were ways for future collaboration. Are there ways, things that we could do to encourage families to re-enroll their students into Matthews Public Schools? So we kind of general areas, having access to virtual courses and content, core content areas, access to virtual courses and elective classes, access to in-person core content, in-person electives, access to athletic programs at Matthews High School. And the 6th option was we have no interest in accessing programs at Matthews County Public Schools. And then there was another option where families could kind of fill in kind of, if they had ideas for future collaboration. Okay, go ahead. All right, so the results by each question. So 7 responses listed wanting flexibility with the curriculum, 7 flexibility with school attendance. Medical issues had 3 responses, concerns with discipline practices at 10, concerns with instructional practices at 9. Some of the comments listed in other, the parents not involved, those comments related to the parents of other students were not involved with their kids, and that was then frustrating the parents who then were electing to homeschool their kid. They felt like there needed to be much more parent involvement to, I think, help maybe improve, and pure assumption, help improve the behavior of the students who were attending. One response said basically it's the parents' role to do the education of their children, kind of plain and simple. 5 people reported bullying as an issue, separate from kind of the discipline practices, but kind of reiterated that bullying was, wanted to emphasize bullying. 4 people articulated frustration with the administration. That was not specific to any school. It was, they mentioned, the responses mentioned different schools and frustration with different schools. So, and full disclosure, one person mentioned me. So, I mean, it kind of, the four kind of were broad. So there wasn't kind of like, it's this person or that person. And then one person articulated a need for more academic support. Their child needed more support than they felt the school was providing at the time of their decision. Okay, next, please. Responses to possible future collaboration. Again, so one person, thought maybe access to virtual content, core content. One person, virtual content in elective areas. One person, expressed a desire for in-person core content access. 5 people talked about accessing in-person elective classes. 10 people requested or talked about having access to the athletic programs at Matthews High School. 3 people basically said they have no interest in accessing programs with Matthews. And again, kind of open-ended comments regarding collaboration. One respondent said you really need to pay attention to what the students are saying, what the students are articulating, do a better job of listening to kind of the current concerns of your students. 4 people, again, reiterated wanting to access athletics. 3 people responded with kind of, is there a way to do sort of a hybrid kind of model? Go ahead, next slide. So some conclusions from this, my conclusions. We had a really low response rate. So we only had 18% of the people who were surveyed took the time to take that survey. I would say sometimes no response is actually a response. It's somewhat perilous to always draw that conclusion, but I think if there were folks who were interested in kind of returning to Matthews or trying to kind of build a different model, my assumption would be that they would have reached out through that. Again, the survey doesn't capture private school students, so we really don't have a good indication of what's driving folks to private schools. A big piece to look at, while it's only 18%, the high rate of response indicating discipline practices as a reason for deciding to homeschool their children. Instructional practices rating second. One thing I will talk about in the last bullet, access to athletics at MHS was rated as the top potential for collaboration. I want to, be very clear about this. That's not a Matthews decision. The Virginia High School League governs eligibility for high school athletics, and so you have to be enrolled in Matthews County Public Schools to participate. One of the many factors to establish eligibility to participate in high school athletics, one of those is being enrolled in Matthews County Public Schools. So that's not something the state allows us to do. So we wouldn't be able to just open the doors for homeschool high school students to then be a part of, say, the football team or basketball team, et cetera. That's not, several states do that. Virginia is not one of those states. So in looking at some of these conclusions, like obviously the board is and we are addressing the academic deficits as part of our strategic plan, as part of our monthly look at student data. I think we've spent the last year looking at having some frank conversations about where our deficits are. We've done a lot of professional development on instructional practices. A big part of that is going to be looking at our MTSS process, looking at student data to then drive some decision-making for intervention and support, but it's also will help us drive enrichment and extension activities for our students. I was hoping to get more response from the survey. We can glean some information from it. it's hard to draw kind of broad conclusions from an 18% response rate. But I think we respond in an appropriate manner based on the information that then was given to us.
Dr. Daniel, how often do you administer that survey?
This was a one-time survey. So it was, and we talked about it, I think, at a board meeting. We've talked about it at some leadership meetings, and so we went ahead and kind of pushed that survey out to kind of try to capture some information. Part of the process with homeschooling is it remains within Virginia a family's right to basically to notify the school board that that's what they are doing. So asking but so many questions of families who are just providing a notice of intent is, I don't know that stepping on toes is the right way to say it, but it kind of encroaches on some rights established by the Commonwealth of Virginia as to a parent's autonomy to make those decisions. So oftentimes homeschool families aren't particularly, oftentimes they're either frustrated with the school division so they don't want further conversations, or they just kind of want to turn in the necessary kind of legal documents in order to do that. So I've tried to have some conversations with families as they've dropped off their intents and just kind of, hey, anything we can do differently? And so I've gotten a little bit of anecdotal information. Usually it relates to either attendance or kind of behavior practices, discipline practices in the schools that families are frustrated with.
On that note, with discipline practices, do you see any opportunity for policy that would assist in that area? Or is there another angle on the discipline that you're sensing?
One of the important pieces that we worked on this spring is the board approving the division-wide student code of conduct to provide guidelines to administration on how to handle discipline practices. I've had multiple conversations over the course of the year. We had a very good collaborative process with principals last year on my probably different discipline philosophy within the division, and making sure that our tier 1 is providing sanctions and intervention. Tier 2 can be part of that restorative practices process, but our tier 1 practice needs to be handling discipline, communicating with families, working through that. Our data, as we look through the strategic plan meeting, are like discipline data in terms of numbers of suspensions is pretty comparable to what it was last year. But anecdotally, I would say that what we were addressing were lower on the totem pole kinds of offenses, because we were hitting it earlier rather than waiting for the larger infractions to occur. I think the cell phone policy approved by the board was instrumental in changing a lot of the dynamic within our schools. So there was a greater reduction in some of the bullying behaviors, some of the meetups, some of the skipping, some of the vaping in the bathrooms and the like. Our principals and our teacher leadership have done a lot of work this summer and in the last 2 weeks talking about what are our classroom expectations and school expectations for what we want our students to do and how they are to behave and what those expectations are. I know the elementary school worked on kind of a flow chart with kind of, these are classroom things and this needs to be handled in the classroom and these are the things that need to be referred. So those are a lot of the pieces that are evolving and that we're working on. And I think that student discipline goes also into our teacher retention process. And I think over time our enrollment will return. But I don't know that in my experience, if homeschool is working, those families don't come back to the public school because it's working. I typically, again, in my experience, I only end up seeing students where the homeschool process didn't work. Either the family's time constraints weren't able to provide the homeschool or something didn't work. But typically, if it's working, you don't move away from it. So once families find success in homeschooling, then that becomes a viable path for that family. So I think our challenge is going to be making sure that the day-to-day experience for our kids is such that families want their kids in our schools and in those classrooms, and preventing anybody else from, not preventing, but offering a better product is kind of what we need to do. Yes, ma'am. Or, sorry, I don't know.
A couple things. First of all, regarding, I think, stepping on toes, we've been sending the survey out, especially with the religious exemption. I think that it clearly could be seen as that. It's, unfortunately, because of the low response, you can't really offer a recommendation of what to do differently. I mean, you don't know if it's going to make a difference or not, because 90% or 80%, 82% we didn't hear from. I know VHSL has their roles. How about the sports? I think crew's the only one that comes to mind that aren't associated with VHSL. Is that something that has ever been, that you know of, ever been discussed as far as homeschool students participating in? And I don't know if Mobject Rowing comes up with those rules versus the school. I'm not quite sure the relationship is there.
I don't know that I'm totally fluent on crew. I only know a little bit from previous experience. My understanding is that the organizing body that runs crew, because crew is not a sanctioned Virginia High School League sport because there are not enough school divisions in the state that offer crew, so VHSL doesn't sanction it or doesn't oversee it. The body that does adopts the eligibility criteria of the Virginia High School League. Okay. So I'm kind of, so that's just in terms of ease of their organization. In terms of Mobject Rowing as an entity, they would set their criteria just as, say, a travel soccer club would kind of set their criteria. I think lacrosse, I don't know if lacrosse is currently a Virginia High School League sanctioned sport or not, but if not, it's pretty close to being there. The lone window of opportunity is if a student, some school divisions open up the opportunity through Virtual Virginia to be a full-time online student through Virtual Virginia. In that situation, that student is a student of Matthews County Public Schools, and they would check that box of eligibility to participate in sports. They're probably, I'm going to look at Dr. Green, but there are probably 20 pages in the handbook that outline eligibility criteria for a student to play sports. People watch it like a hawk. But the confusion arises with there are many similarly named online programs, and there are some public school divisions in Virginia that offer online schools, but those, you would be enrolled in their school division and not enrolled in Matthews. And then there's also a Virginia Virtual Academy that operates at a slightly different model, but again, you end up being enrolled in a different school division and not in Matthews County Public Schools. So from this, we're piloting kind of a situation with some students at the middle school who were looking at kind of being mostly virtual, and we're going to kind of test to see having them come in to do an in-person elective class. So we're going to kind of see how that works, what that looks like, and kind of approach that. I think the caveat too would be ROTC. I think state code or federal code requires school divisions offer ROTC programs to homeschool students. I actually just learned that the other day. But
okay. One final question, because we did talk about discipline and the tiers, the 3 tiers. What is your process as far as monitoring consistency of discipline among the schools?
Starting last year, we had a conversation about, with we being at leadership, talking about kind of common discipline practices, what my expectation was. For example, if a student is caught with tobacco products, my perspective is it's a hard 3-day out-of-school suspension. I think that was a different line than was previously looked at in the school division. So that became kind of the norm. We talked about cell phone, how the cell phone piece would be implemented, student refusal to hand over the phone, then that's no longer a cell phone infraction, that's a defiance infraction, and that's a out-of-school suspension. I iterated with teachers or with senior leadership. We weren't going to tolerate student defiance, disrespect to teachers. We were to take action on that either within schools, depending on kind of what that respect looked like. But it was to come with some level of consequence. Kind of my perspective was, again, kind of reducing some of those just student conferences, but working on kind of action. So there wasn't a formal process. Elementary school, middle school submitted to me when there was a suspension notice. Those notices came in the pony. I reviewed those. I typically looked at SBAR data that comes through PowerSchool so I could track the number of infractions each month. We average about 30, somewhere between 32 and 37 kind of infractions on a normal month. Across the division, yes. But the total number over the year was about the same, but I feel like we were able to begin addressing lower level types of infractions over the year. And that it was probably more of regular conversations. My request of the principals was, if you're not sure, call me, let's talk through it. And let's have the conversation about what my leaning would be in terms of if an appeal comes to me, what I would kind of typically see on like a discipline situation with students.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay. Pre-service weeks and professional development. So if you kind of review what our teachers, so as in convocation, I mentioned there's been a lot. So that comes with more training in these 2 weeks before students come back. So you can look at the schedules submitted by the principals of the professional development that our teachers were working through. A lot of it is technology, but a lot of it is curriculum updates through the Virginia Literacy Act. We've got teams working with MTSS. We've got collaboration, special ed collab meetings. So it's very instructional focused and student focused professional developments. It's also nice to see where the principals included in their schedules kind of the teacher-to-teacher kind of collaboration and celebrating teachers coming back and having the lunches and the collaboration and the celebrations of the staff and really working on developing that family atmosphere within the schools as we have new staff and veteran teachers have retired. So the dynamics in the building are always different each year. So the principals are doing an incredible job on that team building process and building that kind of dynamic that really makes for a positive school climate. Okay, moving on to just other information for the school board. So 9.4, thank you notes to Chesapeake Bank for allowing us to kind of use their facility for our board work session. Thank you notes to Consociate Media for their presentation, their intro to our branding. I would expect more branding and logo work information coming soon. Thank you notes again to the individual who provided input on our textbook review process. I will highlight the additional school fees. So if you're able to pull that up, you will see 3 fees that are highlighted. Those would be the new ones to the board approval. It is the dual enrollment U.S. history class. When we approved the fees late winter, very early spring. At that point, we did not have a dual enrollment U.S. history class, so that fee wouldn't have been approved. I also believe that the their nutrition and wellness class and the tech robotic design class, I believe, are new courses. I'm kind of looking for a head, yeah, okay, I'm getting a head nod. So those are new courses, and so that's why we are now kind of requesting additional student fees. Those are $90 for the class, so it's $15 per credit hour, and then the DE U.S. history class is 2 classes, so you have kind of 101 and then 102, so it's $45 for the first 3 credit class, which is first semester, and $45 then for the second semester class.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I know you have fees and everything. I was talking to Ms. Williams the other day. $10 fee for her course, and that probably goes the first week.
Maybe.
So how do we help getting more money into that for her?
Consumable items within funding consumable items in CT courses is a challenge everywhere. I think I've highlighted before in terms of Perkins money. There's federal Perkins grant that provides money for CTE courses. And again, CTE is career and technical education, would have historically been referred to as kind of VOTEC classes.
How do we get that?
So Perkins is allocated to divisions based on your student enrollment in CTE courses and also your free and reduced lunch populations. It's an algorithm. But the way Perkins is set up, there's also state money that comes into it, but the way Perkins and state money is set up is that you can buy equipment, but you can't buy the consumable stuff. So you can buy a sewing machine, but you can't buy thread. You can buy a hammer, but you can't buy the nail. You can buy a printer, but you can't buy ink. So it's incredibly frustrating, the strings that come with Perkins and state money, and I think you have to use your state money before you can use your Perkins money. And it's a ton of paperwork to get. We probably get, I'm kind of looking at Mr. Applegate, we probably get about $12,000 in Perkins money for the division, plus or minus maybe $3,000. So it's anywhere from $12,000 to maybe $16,000 in Perkins money, spread from grade 5 to 12 in our CTE courses. So that's not getting you much. I mean, so the rest of that then falls on locally funded to buy 2x4s for carpentry, nails for carpentry, fabric, food in culinary classes, filament for 3D printers. You can buy the 3D printer and you hope it comes with a lot of filament, but once that filament's gone, you can't use federal or state money to put filament in the 3D printer.
I believe that's what the lottery money was for, wasn't it?
I don't think that's what the lottery money was for. So it ends up falling on kind of local funding and instructional line items to the schools take the brunt of a lot of that. There are projects and things that will then come from the school up to the school board level to try to use school division level funding to kind of, as you may call it, that slush fund to kind of provide then additional money for classes or other programs to make sure those programs are working. But the $10 fees is a fraction of what it would cost to kind of make that program work. Anything else? Okay.
Any more comments? Moving on to number 10, item 10. Thank you, Dr. Daniel, for all those important reports. Item 10 is school board informational reports. 10.1, the school board conferences and webinars. Just members, please take note of the names and dates in red with upcoming due dates by 12/24 for some of us, and all of the opportunities that are available attached on this informational item. Item 10.2 Board and committee reports by school board members and superintendent. If anybody has any board reports they would like to give at this time. Otherwise, we will reiterate that, Mr. Morgan, you have the upcoming Board of Supervisors meeting on September 19th, and the rest of the year is designated out as well. Anybody have any comment there? Moving to number 11, action items, 11.1. We're looking for a motion for the adoption of the resolution to reappropriate unexpended school safety and security grant funds. May I have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
There's a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Dr. Daniel, would you like to just do a quick reiteration on this? You
Sure.
already
Again, we
touched on it.
talked briefly about it. So the state distributed to every division in Virginia an allocation of money. So there's state money, there's also federal money. That amount is approximately $157,000. There's no match required to access those funds. So it's basically money for us. The only strings attached are how we can allocate or deploy that money, and it has to be for safe. There are guidelines and parameters within that, but it's a little bit more flexible than what we have with the annual safety and security grant money. But again, that money was pushed out to school divisions on June 30th with the understanding that we were going to have to get funding bodies to then reallocate those to the school divisions for FY25 to push that over. So that's what this particular resolution is related to.
I hope we're going to spend every dime of it.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Any more discussion? There's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 11.2, adoption of resolution to reappropriate unexpended all-in tutoring funds. May I have a motion? May I have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt the I make a motion to adopt the resolution for the tutoring fund as recommended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Again, Dr. Daniel, would you like to provide a brief review of this one?
So about this time last year, the state launched their all-in tutoring program. The General Assembly allocated a large pot of money to go to school divisions with the explicit purpose for all-in tutoring. Each school division had to develop a tutoring plan. That plan had to be approved by the state before we could begin spending money on that plan. This pot of money was earmarked for part of our plan has multi-components to it, but the bulk of the $24,000 that was spent last year was to compensate teachers for either giving up planning time for tutoring or staying after school for tutoring. So it's working directly with students in very specific tutoring programs and tutoring areas. The state, initially it was to be expended in the first year. The state has extended that for up to 3 years. So we have not expended, we still have roughly $240,000. The plan this year is going to be to partner with the YMCA for after-school coverage so that we can incentivize and have a better program for students to stay after school, so for tutoring to occur after school in partnership with the YMCA. So we can talk a little bit more about we're working with the YMCA on kind of details and programs, but part of a broader partnership is the YMCA, they're losing access to the Boys and Girls Club after school, and so that MOU is sunsetting. So what we are working on with the YMCA is to provide that after school care on the elementary school, middle school campus. So our students could stay on campus. We can then have ready access to those students then for tutoring programs, continue to compensate teachers to work after school on tutoring programs, and then students would be able to then work with the Y, have supervision from the Y until about 6 o'clock when the Y after-school program shuts down. So it helps support a community need, but it also helps us find a way to have students in the building readily available to teachers to work with them. We can also look at, there's a certification process where outside individuals can become certified to be tutors. They can either volunteer, or we can also compensate tutors to come in after school as well to work with students, but on very specific programs that are approved by the state. So it's not just kind of a show me your homework kind of kids. It's a very specific scripted program that's approved by the state. So what we're asking is for this money to then be reallocated to the school division so that we can work on tutoring programs with students.
Mrs. Hodges.
Two things. One is, when do you think that the plan will begin working with the YMCA, beginning? And secondly, it would be nice to have an update. I'm not sure when that would be, November, January, but how it's progressing.
Okay. The MOU with the Boys and Girls Club with the YMCA sunsets September 30th, I believe. So we are earmarking or kind of penciling in a start date on campus mid-September. I think we looked at like September, ironically, I think September 17th. So around that time frame or maybe we said on the 23rd. Did we say 23rd? Okay, yeah, I'm getting some thumbs up from my principals. So we're looking at September 23rd for the Y to begin hosting students. Historically, they only had about 10 students. We're hoping to obviously grow that number where it's a richer program for students after school for intervention, but also I think it's a tool for us to utilize for enrichment opportunities for students as well. But we can look at providing updates in terms of our tutoring enrollment and student progression in those tutoring programs as we get moving. I think the principals want to get school opened and started, get schedules going, and get kids focused on routines, but then pretty quickly we're going to earmark students who we know would qualify for those tutoring programs.
Any more discussion?
I'd like to ask a question. It says here, fiscal year 25 or fiscal year 26. And it ends. So we got 2 more years, or do we have 1 more year?
So we have 2 more years that we can expend this money. I think whatever we don't end up using in 25, we would have to have another resolution for the Board of Supervisors to then reallocate any remaining money into FY26.
Okay.
Basically, the state is, initially they said you need to use it by June, and then they said, well, you can have the money and have longer duration to kind of pace the use of this money out, which in my opinion is pretty smart. Otherwise, it becomes a race to just spend money.
Since you're going to the Y, and it's after school, and it's way late after school, are you going to have an activity bus?
The Y is coming to us.
Say again?
The Y is coming to us. So the Y is going to host the program in our school. So their after-school program was housed at the Boys and Girls Club previously, not in the YMCA facility. So that after-school program was at that campus. And so historically, they would walk students. They would send a Y representative over, walk students basically across the street, or they would, if it was raining or super cold or whatever, they would make arrangements for those students to get on a specific bus to then be dropped off. But nice weather, nice days, they would walk across. So what's going to happen, what we're proposing and working through is Y representatives would come on campus, have their own locked cabinet with games, activities, arts and crafts that we're going to work on storage, and then designated classrooms, cafeteria space, gym space, whatever it may be, depending on the number of students. And so students who would, right after school, who are earmarked for tutoring would go to tutoring. Tutoring's done, they go join the YMCA. Students who aren't receiving tutoring, they would just go straight to the YMCA people who are on our campus, if that makes sense.
Any more discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. May we have a vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 11.3, looking for a motion for the adoption of the VSBA Code of Conduct for School Board Clerks. May I have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt the Virginia School Boards Association Code of Conduct for School Board Clerks as listed.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 11.4, looking for a motion for the adoption of a resolution naming Charles Koenig to the 2024 Virginia School Boards Association Media Honor Roll. May I have a motion?
With much enthusiasm, I make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Congratulations, Mr. Koenig.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all you do to support us. Item 11.5, I'm looking for a motion to approve the payment of monthly claims. May I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve the monthly claims as reported in the attachment.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? Were the claims in order?
I got two questions.
Okay.
On page 4, second entry, Tidewater Collision Center, bill for $25.49.85. Was this for a bus accident?
Ms. Lau is reporting yes.
Huh?
Ms. Lau is reporting yes, it was.
All right. That's the first I heard about it. That's why I was wondering. Was anybody injured or anything on it, or?
No. Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, I hadn't heard of it. That's why I was curious. And the next item is on page 5, 8th entry, Cook's Heating and Cooling Service for $12,623, room 19 and 38. I guess they replaced the outside air conditioning units.
We had 2 units go bad at Thomas Hunter. So one was in the SPED office and one was, I believe, in Miss Williams' classroom. So that was kind of done in collaboration. So to get 2 2-ton heat pumps installed for $12,000 was a pretty good number.
Miracle.
I believe we had a bunch more. Have they all been done yet, or are we still working on it?
No, so we, at Thomas Hunter, there are approximately 27 heat pumps that provide heating and cooling for the vast majority of classrooms. We replaced 2 last year, I believe, and 2 at the beginning of this school year. So that's a cliff that is coming. So we're looking at, part of that energy audit will be looking at different, better strategies for heating and cooling. To Mr. Hicks's points, do we need to heat and cool all those spaces? But how do we also make sure that the climate is appropriate so we don't have mold growth and et cetera, et cetera?
Now, there was money under some COVID bill for heating and cooling. Is that money still available?
No, so we use some of the, I think it's ARCA, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but that money was used to provide mini splits to heat and cool the hallways at Thomas Hunter, because previously that wasn't a thing at Thomas Hunter. Only the classrooms had climate control.
I didn't know if we still had any money in that or not. That's all.
No, we the COVID class of monies need to be expended by the end of September, and so I think we're down to a couple nickels on terms of COVID monies and things. So there's not much COVID money left.
Another thing for lottery money.
I'll see if we can get you some tickets.
Any more discussion? Just a reminder, Mr. Morgan, you have the September 16th bills. Got it. The rest of the year is also planned out. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to number 12, citizens' comments on items discussed during the meeting. Do we have anyone who would like to approach the podium? Please state your name and location.
Michelle Williams, 3171 East River Road, North Virginia, 23128. Dr. Dobson, I wanted to thank you for mentioning our discussion about the ongoing need for a budget, but I would like to kind of explain the way my class has operated for the last 2 years. Anybody that has seen anything on social media or has read the Gazette-Journal knows that Matthews County as a community has stepped up and flooded my class with an overwhelming amount of support in not just things like fabric and thread and the stuff, but also in the way of financial contributions. Over the Christmas break, not this past year, but the first year I had the class, I was contacted by a representative of the Matthews Women's Giving Circle at home while we were shut down for the holiday, and she requested that I complete an application with her. She had already kind of written the bones to the grant, but wanted some specific information from me added to it, so I collaborated with her to write a grant. And the first year of the class, I was awarded a $5,000 grant with the stipulation that a chunk of those funds would be used to purchase the electronic babies. I took half of those funds and I bought 8 of the electronic babies that have been being used in my classroom. The remaining $2,600 that was there, I have been very cognitive of being fiscally responsible with those funds, and I'm currently entering this school year with substantially more than that in my ongoing budget account. Each, like the soup luncheon that we provided in October, the Seahawk Cafe cart, all of those things where the children are learning those economic skills and financial responsibility, I take great caution that we use the resources that we have, whether it be flour and sugar and chocolate chips or potatoes and onions and whatever it might be, using those things that we have, adding a little bit to that, and then doubling back, making back what we spend and doubling or increasing that by more than double. So where I might have started with $2,500, I believe the bookkeeper could be more precise, but I think we're entering this school year with somewhere in the neighborhood of about $5,000 in that account. So each lab that I use ingredients for, if the community has not donated them or the parents donated them, then I do have just a little cushion, but I'm trying to be very careful with that so that I can stretch those funds for as many years as I can, until which time maybe the board can see, some increase in student fees to make it a little more reflective of what the economy is. I have been very, very blessed to work with the CTE committee on the strategic plan, in that Mr. Applegate and I and Ms. Simpson are all aware over the summer my refrigerator died. And I was at a loss. I was actually out of the state when I got the call. I haven't made it public knowledge. I've only made the powers that be aware of that. I do have individuals waiting to hear if there is enough of the Perkins funds left to supply me with a refrigerator to get us up and running until maybe in the future we can do some sort of renovation. If we can't, I need to kind of know that ASAP, because I also have a couple of other appliance issues that we discussed that I discovered over the training that I had in the summer. We've got to take care of getting fixed as well. So thank you for bringing that to the board's attention. I think so long as the community support continues in the thread that it has in the last 2 years, I think this year we're in a good place starting. Not where we have an overabundance, but I think we have enough to get us through. But thank you.
And I
You
have
were
a question.
exactly right. You were exactly right. I just told some friends of mine last night, I have enough thread that I will have thread until I die. I don't need any more thread right now. And I do have a wonderful quilting guild disbanded in Gloucester and donated, I believe it was 8 22-gallon totes of fabric, and I already had another 8 in my classroom. So we have enough so that my students don't have to be taxed with going to the fabric store and buying more at this point. So we have enough to do some basic projects and get some things done. Dr.
Mrs.
Gibson?
Williams, I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the refrigerator,
Yes.
is it possible for you to teach that class without it?
No.
That's
It
what-
is not.
Exactly.
I'm just being honest. Nutrition and wellness, each chapter, when you go over things like vitamin A or vitamin D, there's certain food labs that is an expectation that you will go over and you'll cook a particular recipe that supports those ingredients. I am going to look into this year partnerships with the Egg Council, the Beef Council, as well as hopefully some of our local farmers, so that maybe we can get some partnerships going there that can kind of lessen the expense out of pocket to Food Lion or to Walmart. But the refrigerator is a necessity.
Absolutely.
The other two things I will bring to your attention, I know I've spoken with Dr. Dobson. When I went through the Safe Serve certification course at VATFAX in July, I learned that I'm kind of not in compliance. I need a freestanding hand washing sink. And I had a plan. I think I know how to make that happen. But in that, I will also need a stackable washer dryer unit that could be specifically used for CTE purposes of sanitation of aprons, dishcloths, and drying towels. Right now, my washer and dryer was bought with special education funds because my room was a special education office or classroom, and that's being used by more than just my kitchen, and that can't continue.
Do you know Keith Faulkner?
I know of him, sir, but I don't know him personally.
You say you need a refrigerator?
I need a refrigerator and I need a stackable washer and dryer.
I'll see when I'll talk to him and see if he's got something used around.
All right, I think we're working on the fridge.
Yeah,
I'm
I've
not
got a
sure-
link, yeah.
I'm not sure where we are on the stackable washer and dryer, but we're making movements on the fridge.
Yeah, I know it's in the process. I just wanted to make you guys aware that's what's been going on. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Hicks?
Richard Hicks, North Virginia. Ms. Machen stated earlier that it is a federal requirement to teach the Constitution. How ironic. The federal government has no authority, constitutional or otherwise, to mandate anything about what to teach in public schools. Maybe some of those people in D.C. need some remedial training in the Constitution. And while I'm at it, let me mention, in addition, the Federal Department of Education is wholly unconstitutional. And for those of us with long memories, the Department of Education was created by President Jimmy Carter in the late 70s as a thank you gift to the teachers union. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Would anyone else like to approach the podium? Thank you for your comments. We'll move to item 13, school board member reports, the opportunity for members to speak for a moment on a topic of their choice. Would anyone like to offer? Yes, Mr. Dobson.
Let me try and beat the drums here a little bit more. We need to work on getting a auto teacher really bad. That way we can trade around and get some students in some other classes in different schools. I think this is something we really need to look at. I know I've said it before, and we haven't really worked on it hard. I think we can work on it harder, and but I think it would do us a lot of good if we could get an automotive teacher in here to teach kids.
I agree with you, Mr. Dobson. I think that's a very worthy project and issue to take up. Does anyone else have any comments or anything to say? Mr. Morgan?
Just a brief comment to sort of follow up what Mr. Dobson just mentioned. I'd love to see auto mechanics brought back to our high school. I think it'd be wonderful. It's my understanding that the holdup has been trying to find a qualified or certified teacher. And I understand that it's a problem. In the event that we go another year or so and still don't have a teacher, I'd just like to throw in an idea that we investigate offering maybe small engine repair, because that does not require nearly the qualifications or certifications that an full-blown auto mechanics teacher would have to have. Just a thought, we've got that shop sitting there, quite a bunch of tools in it, unless they've been removed since I was there. And it looks like a shame to me not to utilize it for something. So perhaps we could investigate looking into some small engine repair.
I agree with that also, Mr. Morgan. I think these are all steps in the right direction for our students. I did have one comment to make. I wanted to just state that we will be looking at having a town hall meeting in the month of October. The date is to be determined at this point, but just to let the community know and the board that we will be discussing a date for a town hall for Matthews County. If no one has anything else, I'd like to take a motion to enter into closed meeting.
I make a motion that we adjourn to a closed meeting.
Second.
For purposes of discussion, Ms. Diggs, would you please be so kind as to read the recommended action for closed meeting?
I recommend and make, what do I want to say here? I ask that we and recommend the action to enter into a closed meeting in accordance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2.2, 3711A1, discussion or consideration of personnel matters, professional staff appointments, support staff appointments, support staff resignations, fall coach resignation, and appointments and winter coaches appointment.
Thank you, Ms. Diggs. Any more discussion? All those in favor of entering into closed meeting, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We are now in